So have you ever, known a kid who was described as just easy? You know, the daughter who never caused a fuss.
Yeah. It sounds like a parent's dream, kind of, on the surface, doesn't it? The
Right.
child who just seems to sail through without any major bumps. But I wonder if we ever stop and think about what might be going on underneath all that calm.
Exactly. That's what we want to get to today, this whole idea of the perpetually well-behaved child, the one who's always agreeable,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe explore some of the, well, less obvious sides of that. What could be the hidden cost, of being the daughter who causes no problems?
Well, from a practical view, you can see why adults appreciate it, right? A
Yeah.
kid who seems mature,
Oh,
responsible,
definitely.
it undeniably makes things simpler in a busy world, less obvious stuff you need to step in for.
Right. It means less work, I guess. Makes life smoother for the adults around them. But here's where it gets interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Childhood is, well, it's meant for exploring, sometimes for messy growth. So when a child consistently seems super mature,
Mhm.
you kind of have to wonder if maybe something important is being um, missed.
Precisely. That early maturity, sometimes it's less about, real inner strength and maybe more about a learned response, how they've adapted.
Ah, okay.
And that kind of adaptation, well, it can have some pretty interesting long-term effects.
Okay, so let's dig into that. What are some of those potential consequences for the child who's always trying to be good and, undemanding? What are they learning?
Well, one thing you often see is this really strong sense of self-reliance. Sometimes maybe too much. They learn to handle things alone, maybe even when it would actually be good to get some support.
And I suppose that goes hand in hand with putting other people's feelings first, almost like an instinct,
Yeah,
putting their own needs way back.
absolutely. Often there's this reluctance to even mention their own struggles, like they feel they shouldn't burden people.
Yeah.
It's almost like their internal script becomes, my problems just aren't important enough to talk about.
Which, I guess, leads to a habit of masking how they really feel, putting on that brave face, even when they're actually, struggling inside.
It becomes their default setting, really.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating, or maybe a bit concerning, is thinking about how these patterns, these really deep patterns, might show up later in adulthood, unexpectedly.
How so?
Sometimes we see links, correlations with things like chronic pain or persistent fatigue, maybe heightened anxiety, if you think about it, constantly pushing down needs, suppressing emotions. That creates a lot of internal strain, doesn't it?
Wow, yeah. It's like the body eventually starts showing the strain of that unacknowledged emotional weight.
Ah.
And it's tricky because this behavior often gets rewarded, right? These kids are
Oh,
praised.
definitely. They get all that positive feedback. You're so mature, so helpful, so easygoing.
Hmm.
And while people mean well, those compliments can actually lock in the very behaviors we're talking about.
So the core message this kid absorbs, often without even realizing it, is that their own needs, their desires, they're somehow less important than keeping others comfortable or meeting expectations.
Mhm.
That's that's a heavy thing for a young person.
It really, really is. And this brings us to something important for you listening right now. If any of this is striking a chord, if it resonates with your own life, what
Right.
now?
Yeah, if you recognize that easy child in yourself,
Yeah.
maybe it's time to turn some of that care, that consideration inward. Think about that younger you who felt they had to be so undemanding.
Acknowledge that past and maybe start practicing just listening to your own needs now in the
Mm.
present. Let yourself reach out. Build connections where you actually feel supported. It's okay to need help. It's okay to ask.
Absolutely. It's really about giving yourself permission.
Mm.
Permission to not always have everything perfectly together.
Yeah.
To embrace the vulnerabilities. Recognizing your needs doesn't make you a burden. It just makes you authentically human. So maybe the thought to leave you with is, what would it actually feel like to give yourself that permission? To
Mhm.
just be?